You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play.
The options market can be a confusing place. Sorting through the daily avalanche of data, alerts, updates, articles, and analysis to find the most important information is an overwhelming prospect. But now you have help. Welcome to the Options News Rundown, the only program that breaks through the noise to bring you the most important news and information from the world of options. Every day, we bring you the top 5 option stories curated by the options experts at theoptionsinsider.com, the premier source for options information. The Options News Rundown is brought to you by Market Taker Mentoring, the leader in options trading education. Get trader education, daily trade ideas, and more with a free 1-week trial of Market Taker Mentoring's Live Advantage Group coaching class by visiting markettaker.com/insider. And now it's time to break through the noise. It's time for your Options News Rundown.
Good morning. Today is February 12th, 2019. This is your Options News Rundown. I'm Dan Passarelli. Our first story today is from investing.com. It's the top 5 things to know in the market on Tuesday. First thing to know is lawmakers reach a tentative deal to avoid government shutdown. Political headlines will remain in focus. Amid news, Democratic and Republican lawmakers reached a tentative deal on border security funding, easing fears over another partial government shutdown, which was due to begin from Saturday. A congressional aide who asked not to be identified said the outline of the deal did not contain the $5.7 billion President Donald Trump wants for a border wall, but instead included a $1.37 billion for erecting 55 new miles of fencing along the southern border. The tentative deal still has to be written into legislation, pass both chambers of Congress, and get Trump's approval before Friday night to avoid a partial government shutdown. Second thing to note today is day 2 of U.S.-China trade talks are underway. U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer arrived in Beijing as high-level trade talks between the U.S. and China entered a second day. Talks kicked off with discussions among deputy-level officials on Monday before minister-level meetings later in the week. The two sides are trying to hammer out a deal ahead of the March 1st deadline, when U.S. tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese imports are scheduled to increase to 25% from 10%. Washington is expected to keep pressing Beijing on long-standing demands that it make sweeping structural reforms to protect American companies, intellectual property, and policies aimed at forcing the transfer of technology to Chinese companies, and curb industrial subsidies. Third thing to note today is Dow futures point to triple-digit gains. U.S. stock futures pointed to a higher open, with the Dow set for a triple-digit gain as investors cheered signs of a compromise in the standoff between the U.S. government funding and positive signals around U.S. trade talks. In earnings, Under Armour, Activision Blizzard, Occidental Petroleum, Shopify, Dean Foods, Groupon, Molson Coors, Akamai Technology, and Twilio are among the major companies due to publish their latest quarterly figures. Elsewhere, European stocks were higher, with nearly all major bourses across the continent in positive territory. Among national indices, Germany's DAX and Britain's FTSE 100 were both up 1%. Earlier, shares in Asia closed broadly higher, with stocks in Japan leading gains in the region. The fourth thing to note today is Powell highlights a busy day for Fed speakers. A number of Fed speeches will capture the market's attention as traders look for further hints on the outlook for monetary policy in the months ahead. Most of the focus will fall on Fed Chair Jeremy Powell, who will be speaking at the Hope Enterprise Corporation Rural Policy Forum in Mississippi at 5:45 p.m. Eastern Time. Speeches from Cleveland President Loretta Mester and Kansas City Fed President Esther George are also on the agenda for today. Market expectations for a Fed rate hike this year are hanging by a thread, according to Investing.com's Fed Rate Monitor tool, after the U.S. Central Bank last month pledged to be patient with further rate hikes. No major economic reports are expected this morning. The U.S. dollar was little changed at 96.87, holding close to its 2019 high. In the bond market, U.S. Treasury prices inched lower, pushing yields a tad higher across the curve, with the benchmark 10-year yield rising to 2.64%. And the fifth thing to know today is May is to give Parliament a Brexit update. Prime Minister Theresa May will tell British lawmakers they must hold their nerve over Brexit to force the European Union to accept changes to the divorce deal that would pave the way for an orderly exit. The talks are at a crucial stage, May will tell Parliament later today, according to remarks supplied by her Downing Street office. We now all need to hold our nerve to get the changes this House has required and deliver Brexit on time. The UK is on course to leave the EU on March 29 without a deal, unless May can convince the bloc to reopen the divorce deal she agreed in November and then sell it to skeptical British lawmakers. The EU has refused to reopen the Brexit divorce deal, though. May insists she can get legally binding changes to replace most of the contentious part of the Irish border backstop, the main hurdle to a Brexit deal. Sterling was marginally lower at $1.2842. Our second story today is from Reuters.com. The dollar is set for its biggest winning streak in 2 years. The dollar was on track for its longest winning streak in 2 years on Tuesday, as hopes of a breakthrough in U.S.-China trade talks and a tentative deal to avoid the U.S. government shutdown encouraged investors to cover short bets on the currency. At the end of 2018, the dollar was the consensus short trade among hedge funds, as traders bet the U.S. Federal Reserve would pause its interest rate increases and other major economies would grow quickly. But the Fed held interest rates steady last month. The case for buying the euro and the pound has weakened steadily. Economic data in Europe have deteriorated, and Brexit concerns have dogged the British pound. Our third story today is from Investing.com. Oil's up nearly 2% on Saudi and OPEC cuts. Oil prices gained nearly 2% on Tuesday, supported by OPEC-led production cuts, which Saudi Arabia said it would surpass by over 500,000 barrels per day, and by U.S. sanctions against Iran and Venezuela. Brent crude futures were up $1.17 or 1.9% at $62.68 a barrel by 11:35 Greenwich Mean Time. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude oil futures rose 89 cents or 1.7% to $53.30. Markets are tightening because of voluntary production cuts. Those are effective since January 1st, led by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and allies, including Russia, aimed at forestalling a global glut. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Newsweek News for today, February 12th, 2019. This is your Options News Rundown. I'm Dan Passarelli. Trade smart and have a nice day.
The Options News Rundown is brought to you by Market Taker Mentoring, the leader in options trading education. Get trader education, daily trade ideas, and more with a free 1-week trial of Market Taker Mentoring's Live Advantage Group coaching class by visiting markettaker.com/insider.
The preceding program was a production of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.